Peter. Right, so if we're okay, I am going to crack straight on, if that's okay. So first of all, thank you very much for coming along. Great to see some familiar faces. Third in a series of 9 of webinar on Wednesdays. Unusually for today, we're kicking off at 2:30. I hope that hasn't caught anyone out. 2:30 BST. Excuse me. I hope that hasn't caught anyone out. But in relation to future weeks, they will all be at 11 a.m. So some sort of degree of routine. This is what I always tell clients. Then that's going to be fantastic. And bear in mind, I'm kind of doing this on the fly on my own. If you want to ask a question, then you might have to be a bit more obvious rather than just putting it in the chat box. So if I could ask you just to be kind of patient in that respect, that would be fantastic. Thank you very much. I'm just going to admit all again. Right. Okay. Brilliant. Okay. So welcome. You can use the chat box, name we've done, location, company. What would be really helpful at some stage as well, if it's convenient for you, is how you found out about this webinar. It'd be interesting to know what the most productive routes to market are. Excuse me. And anyway, 30 plus years corporate sales. I'm a sales coach now, and I'm a visiting lecturer with Aston Business School, and they're the reasons, so we can blame them that I wasn't able to do this at 11 o'clock this morning. I was delivering a separate. Sorry, let me just admit these as well. I was delivering a separate workshop for them on value proposition this morning, which is an all-morning one. So we should be all set to go now. And I'm delighted to tell you that no matter what the deal, same as last week, sales principles are all the same. So I'm also excited because it's an area that I sometimes have difficulty with is on social media, and I am delighted to have a social media expert joining us this afternoon, because what a crowded marketplace that is. So Sarah Tomaszewska is going to join us, and she'll get some space in a few minutes time, but talking about the what's, whys and wherefores in your go-to-market strategy, and function social media can perform for you at all times. Let's just admit all again. Okay, so and if you've got any questions, let us know in the chat box, and we'll get with it. Okay, so along came a virus, and again, don't want to be a doomsayer, but UK economy is forecast to lose 1/3 of GDP in the last 6 months of this year. And that's going to be the greatest crash since the crash of 1929. So whether we like it or not, and one can never outwit, one is never stronger than Mr. Market, as Warren Buffett would say. You've got to embrace this, otherwise it's going to come back and bite you in the backside. And if you're an SME with less than, shall we say, 50 people in your organization, you are already feeling the brunt of that, and it's already starting to bite in terms of revenue and the preservation of cash being king. And so I'm afraid we've got to get our arms around this and adapt or pivot as we kind of move forward. So all of a sudden, procurement, particularly I've been contacted by a couple of PPE companies in the last 10 days or so, all of a sudden procurement roles getting to the buyer sooner rather than later are just absolutely king. And if you've got an HR function in your organization, then all of a sudden they are in the spotlight, and you will find out what your HR department is made of, whether they are just, forgive me for any HR professionals that are on the line, when you're finding out what they're made of at this point in time, and whether they are, if you ever heard that expression, you don't really know what a person's true. People are like tea bags. You don't really know what they taste of until you dip them in hot water. Well, ladies and gents, procurement and HR are all in hot water at the minute, so we'll get to see what they're really moving. 37% of people are happy to work from home. Most of us are doing so at the moment, or we're going to an office where it's safe to do so. So the world is going to change, and that's an opportunity for some, and it's a detractor for others. And it's whatever you want it to be. So we've got to embrace that. And the change is so manifest that we are going to ask ourselves questions about whether big infrastructure projects are still as needed as they were 2 months ago. And if your business is in any way related to, dependent upon these projects to succeed, then your business may change as a direct result of these businesses being, or these programs being questioned. So just bear that in mind in if they're on your forecast, and they're going to be in the spotlight right now as to whether they're still required or not, because that 80 billion that's still got to be spent on HS2, and that's by no means the only project, that's now going to be questioned, whether it's today, tomorrow, or next week. But that will be questioned at some point. I suspect it's doomed to success, but it may take a different form. So anyway, so pivot is the new word in our language. And it was always there, but now we're front and center. We're experiencing what that pivot should look like for our businesses, and the actual dependency around how much is this costing in the UK economy, but all the economies around the world that are affected. There are about 203, but they are all affected in some way, shape, or form around. And how long will the lockdown last? That is going to be the extent, or the quantum, if you like, as to the cost to the economy, and therefore the reparations that have to take place kind of going forward. So anyway, so a question from last week, just to let you know that I do think about these things. Excuse me. There was a question asked. I played a particular scene and I deconstructed it, and I possibly should have spent a bit longer prior to, I try to cover so much information in these, but prior to covering the scene, unpacking it, I should have spent longer saying selling with integrity. It's so important to have integrity in sales, and that's one of the reasons I suspect that the profession of sales, certainly as it relates to UK business, if you're a sales professional in the UK, you are battling upstream for respect. And so it behooves all of us to act with integrity, whether in sales or not, that should be the case. But if sales is any part of your business, then you need to be talking about selling with integrity, with honesty, and be honest in all your actions. I mean, frankly, that should go without saying, but I'm really glad someone picked me up on it after the event, because I should have spent longer before the event just asking people to suspend their disbelief. That said, so sales ethics is really, really important. Mis-selling, so that scene was, although that movie was only made about 5 or 6 years ago, the time was that was in the late 1980s with the liberalization of the financial markets, and it was an example of mis-selling. Well, if you've got a bank account, then you are probably banking with a company that has been involved in mis-selling to a greater or lesser extent. You've all heard, thank heavens, August 2019 has been and gone, but that was the deadline to stake your claim for a PPI reclaim. We were probably all fatigued from listening to that. But I'm just making the point that mis-selling, misrepresentation isn't done solely by small get-rich-quick type firms. There are lots of firms, massive corporations that have engaged willingly or otherwise, sometimes inadvertently, in mis-selling. And the reason they do that is because they compensate their salespeople to overachieve, because alignment of incentives is a really important piece of that. Then they've suddenly found themselves caught up in all that mis-selling, and it's 35 billion is the current cost to the banking sector alone of mis-selling PPI. So what a big number that was. Okay, I'm just going to admit some more people into this event. Oh, there we go. Right, so they'll be coming into the event. Welcome to everyone. So mis-selling is all around us. So integrity, that's really, really important. And I want to talk also about, and some of the people that might be on the call, Mr. Marlowe in particular, might have been aware that I once, because I was young once as well, I took a call from a great big customer of ours who I'd phoned to chase an order. I was expecting an order. And this guy called Gerard, making sense now? This guy called Gerard said, who I'd phoned and chased for an order. It was quite a big order at the time. But I was actually on annual leave. And so I phoned him to chase this order. We got that order in the end, not that particular day, but it did move things along. He phoned me back in the afternoon to talk to me about a situation that he felt we hadn't delivered on. We were a little bit late in delivering some stuff. And sometimes when it's a very intense account, highly active account, there's always stuff that you're overachieving on and you know, room for improvement in other areas. So he told me, he said, Keith, you know something, today I feel that you're in for sales and out for complaints. And do you know what? He was absolutely right. Now, I was able to repair that relationship because I thought, actually, I've got a personal responsibility here. Of course, I want orders, but actually, as the account manager, I've got a responsibility to make sure all of the activity is delivering, not just the low-hanging fruit, getting orders and all the rest of it. I'm responsible for the whole thing. And that was a salutary lesson. And so in line with sales ethics and the avoidance of mis-selling, but actually we've got to take the rough with the smooth. Sometimes there are conversations you have to enter into with your clients where stuff just isn't going right. That's life. That's why salespeople can you know, sometimes they can make an awful lot of money. It's not unusual for salespeople to make more than the CEO. Not unusual at all. Maybe not in terms of long-term incentive plans, but in terms of raw comp for that year, that's why salespeople are incentivized. Anyway, so Ewan, good to see you on the call as well, and you got the code. Fantastic. Right, I'm going to move on because we haven't got to go to market yet. Value proposition just in 30 seconds. Crystal clear messages, contextually relevant benefits to the target audience you're trying to appeal to. Ask yourself, so what? No BS, no waffle. If you want an example of that, you know, tune in to the Downing Street broadcast at 5 o'clock and listen to the BBC's questioning. Not nearly tough enough, but you'll find the first 2 or 3 minutes of any answer, frankly, hasn't even answered the question. It's somehow positioning. So when you're looking to, in the private sector, especially when you're looking to win business from a target market, you can't afford BS or waffle. You've got to have crystal clear messages for your customer so that they're easy to understand and easy to digest, and therefore simpler to act upon. So be crystal clear what you're asking your customer, and make sure it's actually what you want to achieve. Otherwise, you're just going to find yourself having tea and biscuits, which is not a highly productive encounter with a customer at all. Okay, glad. Sarah T, glad to see you're on the call. Okay, what's happening next? Brilliant. Okay, so ideas. Lots of ideas we're going to talk about today. Go to market is one of them. We talked about pivoting. So the first definition of what is actually a pivot is it's a fixed point. It's supporting something. So the fixed point, I would argue, is time in this particular instance. But we need to turn around and look at how we're responding in time to our customer base. We need to pivot, in other words. And the other definition would be the most important person or thing in a situation. Now, for everyone on the line, it may well be, particularly when it comes to customer relationships, that look in the mirror. The most important thing in a situation or person could be you, how you're responding to this situation. And it's a particularly anxious or stressful time for people in the market. And at stressful times, some people totally collapse. Perfectly human response to the current situation. Some people laser-like focus, okay, this is what we need to do. Those kind of people are really good in emergencies and crises, and my goodness, are we in one of those? So business used to be about who you know, and to a certain extent that will never leave us. But increasingly over the last certainly 5 years and probably 10 years, it's about who knows you. So given that in real time, in face-to-face communications, meetings, etc., we have a limited profile, if you like. We can't know as many people face-to-face as we know online. So your ability to get online fast, develop your brand persona, your organization's product or service persona, its profile online, is absolutely critical at this stage. So now it's about who knows you, and being online and mastering online and mastering social media is absolutely top, front and center of everything you should be thinking about right now, except for cash, the accumulation of cash and the preservation of it in your business bank account to ensure that you can survive this current worldwide crisis. I don't use that phrase lightly. So online, no longer optional, it's absolutely mandatory. Okay, so we're in a changing market now. Who's winning? And what sort of agenda, what sort of contexts are winning contexts at the moment? Well, PPE suppliers, absolutely. The nation is crying out for PPE, generally in larger numbers. And the government will tell you about my statement around this is not to disrespect what the government's doing. This is a logistics exercise the world has never known before. So I'm rather sympathetic, frankly, to the enormous operational difficulties that the current PPE crisis and related crises are generating, certainly for the UK and around the world as well. So it takes all of us to grab a hold of that and help where we can. So it's not just, are you supplying PPE, but there's a supply chain around that. There are customer relationships around that, where if you think long and hard about it in your business, in the way that your operating model works, then maybe there's an opportunity for you in that, how you can capitalize but not exploit, because I can tell you that will come back to bite you in the backside. There are several firms out there that are profiteering unreasonably, and actually some of them are really big firms, and not just in PPE. But when I went to the supermarket earlier on this week for my essential grocery shop, the deals that were around pre-COVID-19 are no longer around. So they're not necessarily raising their prices, but some supermarkets are not giving you the buy one get one free, that you're losing the ability to do a deal because there's exceptional demand in the marketplace. So just be careful with either doing that or creating the appearance of doing that. Okay, so supermarkets are involved in that game as well. But so supermarkets are winning. Tesco sales are 30% ahead. It's like Christmas on steroids for some of these people, because we can't go out and eat. So we tend to eat higher quality produce, treat ourselves, if you like, particularly in anxiety-inducing times. Hey, Jimmy, excuse me. And so if you may not be directly involved in selling to the multiples or the big department stores or grocery chains, you might be involved in their supply chain, so food production houses, then maybe that's a relationship that you could get closer. Maybe their systems, processes are being really, really strained, and you can add some value to those business activities in time. I am reminded by the great Yukon gold rush of 100, 150 years ago. The people that made the most money out of the gold rush weren't the people mining for gold. They were the people supplying the pickaxes, the shovels, the infrastructure to obtain that gold. They were the real winners. And actually, the people building the railway lines, Andrew Carnegie comes to mind, they were the people that won the most out of the gold rush, the rush for oil, and associated, they were the enablers of those particular rushes to happen. So just think in mind about what it's going to take for you and your business to pivot, capitalize, but not exploit. There are going to be other examples that online specialists can tell you about that just haven't reached me yet. And feel free, if you want to put in the chat box, you're very welcome to put your details or even your LinkedIn. If you want to be contacted by other people on this, please absolutely go for it. So quickly revisit this slide. Where are you this week? Are you still in shock and denial? Hopefully no one's there. Maybe we're just kind of negotiating, we're bargaining, excuse me, around, well, how do I deal with this? Do I have to change? Do I not have to change? We're trying to negotiate with, I can assure you this COVID-19 is more powerful than all of us. Nature is awesome in that regard. So the quicker you can get to acceptance, the better for you, the better for your business. I can tell you that I'm more towards there than I was perhaps a couple of weeks ago. I was at the bottom of that curve, the depression part of that curve, because frankly, I miss my children. I can't see them just now. And I've got to believe I'm not the only one on this call that's kind of going through that process. They're at university, they're safe and sound. I know that. I can do a video call, not nearly as good as seeing them in person and giving them a hug. You know, we're all having to deal with that right now. So, grief curve, where are you? Hunker down, lean in. I'm leaning in. I hope you are too. Let's get online. Let's get online fast. We may have to adapt our offers accordingly. We're all having to think kind of outside the box to get to that place. So that's my gross assumption is that you want to get involved, get stuck in. Now, you saw this briefly last week. Just to remind you, value proposition we dealt with last week. That was the first and most important. I'm assuming you've thought about your messages, how that communicates, how that resonates with your market. Today, we're talking about go-to-market strategy, the second in the prioritization of that order. But we're going to be talking about the rest of those B2B phases, if you like, throughout the rest of the webinar series every Wednesday at 11 a.m. Okay, brilliant. So here's a quick exercise for you just now is knowing what you know about your value proposition and the resources available to you, which is your cash at hand, your products or services in the marketplace, and your customer base. What's your current sales channel and why? And you don't have to communicate this in chat. Just be reflecting on it as I'm talking about it. And what are your main social media channels and why? And I just want to give you a few seconds to be thinking about that. Just 1 second, excuse me. Okay, right. So have you thought about that? And it'll be interesting because what I'm going to do, what I'm going to do now is take you through, a set of slides that maybe is going to lead you to a different place, or maybe everything's 100% perfect and you're all satisfied already. So back to first principles. On what is a go-to-market strategy. It's literally the way that you take your products, you connect your offer, your value proposition to your target market, working from left to right on your screen. So, and you do that via a variety of sales channels. which are going to be direct. So you might have a direct sales force, or a direct, maybe not even a formal sales function, but you're going to have people generally that talk to customers directly. You've got direct relationships with them, talking to your target market. But there are other ways of getting your message and connecting with customers that we're going to talk about. So it's important to note, by the way, we mentioned this last week, that your value proposition could actually vary slightly in relation to your target market. So you might have one message to, shall we say, financial services customers, but you might have a slightly different, a more nuanced message to manufacturing base. And I sincerely hope that that's the case, or at least you go through a thought process about, is it the same value proposition? Is it the same service that we deliver to a different target market? So at least go through that. And you're gonna, I'm gonna position this for the purposes of pragmatism as a 60-second pitch, because the crystal clear message that you get as a result of delivering a 60-second pitch, once you've got the golden nuggets contained within that, you can repurpose that content for all of your other sales channels. Okay, right. So your go-to-market strategy components is this. Excuse me one second. Is your target market, which we talked about. Who are you selling to? Do you need to think about segmenting a segmentation process for your customers? And you might do that via a variety of business sectors, geographies, or otherwise. So just be thinking about that around how you go to market. And who's your ideal client? Maybe you can create some avatars. Avatars are a really important way of thinking about, because it humanizes, with a small h, the way that you're thinking about your customers. Okay, well, we've got one customer that is 30 years old, she's female, not married yet, whatever, and I'm not heteronormatizing that, by the way, before anyone gets off, but they might look like that. Your other target market might be mid-50s, white, male, pale, stale, whatever else goes with that. You might have a different avatar that says they're millennial, they're at university, it's the bank of mum and dad, something like that going on. That might be another avatar, but just that helps compartmentalize your thinking around your customer base. So then there's your direct sales. It could be yourself. It could be your website. You might have an e-commerce website where people can transact, and therefore one of your calls to action will be check out the latest deals on our website. And that might be doing automatically to either a greater or lesser extent for you. The benefits are, you can pretty much you might not be able to control the market, but you can control how your sales force, how your website responds to changing market conditions. So there are benefits of control there, but one of the drawbacks is it's time intensive, because you're only getting a one-to-one return on your time and investment in general terms, and it's expensive to scale, because if you want another salesperson, that could be another, pick a number, but that could be your number. It's hard to scale on a one-to-one relationship. And then there are your indirect sales channels to market, if you like, which could be distribution or partners. So Amazon could be a distribution partner of yours, or FedEx, or whatever that happens to be. So I just need you to get into that zone for a second. Or affinity partners. I'm an affinity partner for InLeads. .co.uk, we'll talk about that in a second, but that's one of my routes to market, if you like. One of my values to market is I'm an affinity partner of theirs. You might be an affinity partner of a utility warehouse, or I don't know, Google, or something like that. One of your channels that helps you sell in the market. And I have to say, in times of crisis such as this, every single asset in your business has to be working overtime, has to be earning its keep. So referral marketing might also be one of your assets. And I have to say that in terms of networking, BNI, all those things, we're having to rethink about how we do that kind of stuff in a different way. They're having to pivot their businesses at the same time. So you have less control about those things, but they can be incredibly valuable to you, because they do scale, and they can scale really quite quickly. So really think about how you can optimize your engagement with an indirect sales channel, such as what was previously only a face-to-face networking partner. How can you really kind of pour some gasoline on that fire, if you like, so they're scalable, but also be careful that you're scaling the right thing. Be careful what you scale, because if there's a fly in that ointment, if it's an imperfect model, if you scale that, you'll have a multiple heartburn experience from scaling the wrong thing. Okay, and then there's social media. So Sarah, I can't actually see you online as such, but I'm just going to, there we go. Right, so Sarah's online. It was fantastic. I know enough about social media to be dangerous, of LinkedIn, and enough about it to know that it's better for me to bring on someone who really knows what they're talking about to talk about social media. So Sarah, no pressure, but may I hand over to you for say 10 minutes to talk us through, because people may not have really thought about their social media presence, but now they're having to. So I wonder if you could just take us through a couple of 10 minutes or so of that, and then make it obvious when you're handing back to me, please. Would that be okay?
That's, yeah, perfect. That sounds good. Again, as Keith said, this is a perfect time to focus on your social media marketing and start planning and thinking about social media as strategy. I know it's quite tempting to pull your all your budgets from marketing. However, this is a great opportunity. And actually, according to research, only 7% people businesses sees opportunity during this difficult time in terms of their digital marketing. So this is quite important time, and you can really use this as opportunity. For example, we can observe that social media advertising, the cost went down nearly 20%. So if you're looking, for example, for Facebook advertising, this is probably time to start exploring and testing. But in terms of the strategy, I'm going to give you sort of 3 tips to sort of take away with you. So you can use this time to sort of start planning. I would always suggest that if you start thinking of social media strategy or any strategy, any marketing strategy, I would first start by having a goal. I know it might seem a bit simple, but a lot of people start their social media marketing without even thinking for a second what exactly they want to achieve from social media. And very often those goals aren't very realistic as well. So it's just something important to bear in mind, that is it more inquiries? Is it raising awareness of your business, improving customer service? It could be obviously a number of things, but unless you have that goal, you wouldn't know whether you achieved it or not. You need to know how the good would look like. And again, try to start with the goal, and then it will help you create a plan, a strategy for your business. Then once you know exactly what you want to achieve, and you know exactly how the good looks like, this is time when you should do your research. And again, as Keith mentioned, knowing exactly who is your target audience is absolutely crucial. Because to be honest, the whole point about social media is it's not about broadcasting to your target audience. It's about communicating with them and trying to build relationships. So knowing exactly your audience, what they like, what they're into, what keeps them up at night, it's really, really important, because you need to be able to talk to them, and the content you put on social media, they should be able to identify with it. It's really important. So I would as a second sort of step, I would suggest doing research and research your target market, exactly who you want to attract, who is the decision maker, if it's, for example, if it's B2B. And again, researching, for example, exactly what social media channels they use, what sort of publications they read. Because, for example, I come across a lot of situations when people set up a lot of social media channels. They want to have everything from TikTok and Pinterest and Facebook and Instagram. And the problem is you end up having loads of social media accounts, but actually you won't have time probably to manage them all, or it will be really expensive. So I would really think about where is your target market, and pick those social media channels your target market uses on a regular basis. Because then it will just basically make more sense. You can always add more social media channels to your strategy, but most people would have probably 2 or 3 or even one, their favorite social media channel they use on a regular basis. Another thing is researching your competitors, see what they're doing on social media, what posts they post have the best engagement, what social media channels they use, what hashtags they use, whether if it's, for example, like Twitter or Instagram, because this really will help you, because if they already manage social media for a long time, they've done all that research practically for you. You just need to see what worked for them and what didn't. Very often you'll probably see posts that completely look wrong or have absolutely no engagement. So this is basically a good time and good opportunity for you to see what works, what doesn't. Another aspect that it's really important. So once you know exactly who is your typical market, once you've done all your research and you know exactly what social media channels to use, I would really think about your content. It's really important, the stuff you post on social media. It's very important that it's visual, that it's engaging, it's interesting. But again, it's not too promotional. No one likes adverts, so try to have a mix of posts that are and that give value to your potential clients, as well as inform them of what you do. Again, it's very important that it's visual, so make sure that the content use as many photos and videos as possible. For example, you can use a number of copyright, like if you don't have access to, if you don't have specific product you can take photos of, there are plenty of websites out there with copyright-free images where you can just take as many images as you like and post them on your social media channels. The ones I use, and they're pretty brilliant, are Pexels or Pixabay, which can help you with making sure that your social media is visual and engaging as well. And again, what I ask my staff always, when you see a social media post, before it goes live, just ask yourself, if you saw that post on social media, would you engage with it? Would you comment on it, or would you like it? Because if the answer is no, then probably it means it's not good enough. Again, it's really important, and never treat social media as broadcasting channel. It's important to engage with your audience. Use the tools out there. It's a great way. For example, you can use hashtags on Twitter to search for conversations and communicate with your potential clients. You can use Facebook groups, another great tool. You can set up your own group. It's a great opportunity for you to identify different topics, what people care about, what people search for, and this way you can. The whole point of social media is trying to build community, and you can use those tools to help you achieve that. I would also encourage everyone to make sure that make sure that you monitor and analyze on a regular basis all your social media activities, all the social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and so on. They give you fantastic analytics, which can give you a lot of data in terms of who exactly follows your post, what's their age, gender, interest, basically everything. And it's amazing how much data they have on you, but also you can use that into your advantage to help you create better content and to become better. Don't worry if posting something doesn't work straight away, it's okay. And the key is to basically learn from all those analytics and learning and improving your engagement on a weekly basis. So I suggest always have a look at what you've been posting before and try to make it better every single time. Another tool that is pretty popular in our industry is Canva, which allows you to create great content for free, great graphics. It's visually and making sure it's all branded and similar to your branding guidelines. To be honest, I can see I'm already running out of time. I could be talking about social media probably for a whole day, but I'm sure Keith's got my contact details. So if you have any specific questions, I'm happy to answer them all. And yeah.
So thank you. Excuse me. Thank you for coming on and explaining things much more eloquently than I would have done. It might be worth, if you're interested, you're welcome to post your LinkedIn sort of URL into the chat so that people can kind of reach out to you directly. All I would say to that is remember me in your will. So right. So anyway, so thank you for that. I'm gonna press on if that's okay. If anyone's got any questions around that, we will get some questions in a minute, but I want to respect the 3:30 sort of finish time that I promised everyone. I am recording this. I'll push out another message a little bit later on with the link to the recording. So and I've been a number of views from last week, so that's encouraging. So segmentation, really important to be thinking about that. If you try to sell to everyone, you'll end up selling to no one. So really think about what does your avatar look like, who you're selling to, why you're selling it to them, why do they buy? And I'll tell you what, if you don't know, then if you've got what I would call a tame relationship where you are closer to some customers than others, ask them, can you tell me, Mr. Customer, could you just kind of help me out? People will want to help out in a crisis, as long as you're respectful of time. Ask them, this is what I think about my offer. What do you think? It's called squaring the circle. That's a really healthy thing to do, I would suggest. So your sales message, it could change according to your sector, according to the territory that you're selling in. Your direct sales opportunities, make sure the messages are aligned with your website. If you've got indirect sales channels, there's distribution or channel sales partners, if you have those, very much harder to control, but they do need to be aligned. So is the website confirming what you're telling people over Zoom or face-to-face when we eventually get a chance to do that? It's really important. And your website, of course, is open 24/7 to generate revenue and cash for you. So another thing, I have to say, I'm not that detailed a person, but except for when it comes to grammar. And even happened on the BBC when they were providing subtitles on something, a prepared statement. There were some spelling errors. There's no easier way to undermine your message than if you have spelling inaccuracies in your sales collateral, whether it be a printed brochure, whether it be a piece of digital content. So it's worth getting it reviewed by someone else before it goes out there, if it's a very important communication, because otherwise you'll undo all your hard work. And you can't do everything in relation to business, especially where it's all hands on deck just at the minute. Maybe you've got furloughed staff, so you're having to do very much more than you would normally have to do. So whatever you do, you need to do it well. I hope that goes kind of without saying. And Sarah, you kind of touched on this during your presentation. Thank you for that. But you can't control all your social media channels to the same extent. So whatever you do, don't dabble. Do some research, pick your best channels. LinkedIn works for me, and I do, I was about to say a bit of Instagram as well. I don't think I dabble. My messages are aligned. On one person, I recognize that. So you will get those same messages. And for me, when you're communicating, particularly on social media, of course you're going to be selling, but I think it's in terms of the percentage split. If you post 3 posts, 2 of them should be adding value or giving your point of view on a particular subject matter. 1 of them should be selling, and I try really hard to maintain that. And I think that's worth bearing in mind. So if you're more than 51% of the time you're adding value, having a point of view, having a constructive dialogue without overtly selling, I think that's healthy. And I think people will reflect upon that. I put it this way. In the good old days, 6 weeks ago, when we could all go networking face to face, there is nothing, or there was nothing more tiresome than someone who was in permanent sales mode. God, I hope there's no one online. But anyway, it's my webinar. So, for instance, I come across a few people who were selling coffee, who didn't care about you. They just wanted to let you know, would you like to buy some of their health coffee? Jimmy's smiling. So you might even have met the same people I met. It wasn't you, I know that. But that is tiresome. That is how not to sell. It's 1980s. We're no longer in the 1980s. Get over it. So start adding some value. Start creating the illusion that you care about people. I say that somewhat tongue-in-cheek. You absolutely need to care about people. People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. Never in history has that been truer than what it is today, here and now. So I don't apologize for banging on about that. So here's another sort of exercise. Given what we've been talking about and chatting about the last 50 minutes, you've already reflected on this once before we went through, I hope, some value-added sort of thought processes. So now, knowing what you know about direct channels, indirect channels, social media, can I just ask you, you're very welcome to at least reflect on this, but if you would be courageous enough to put in the chat box whether there have been any additional or incremental ideas for, actually, do you know what? Sarah mentioned this, Keith mentioned that. I'm really going to investigate this way of going to market. It would be fantastic if you want to put some. I haven't got the chat box available to me. It's buried away on my screen somewhere. So I'm just going to give you a few seconds to kind of think about that. So what's going to be your main sales channel and why? That may have changed. What will be your main social media channel and why? It would be really, really helpful, not least of which for you. And because that's the kind of stuff that we all need to be thinking about just now. So I'm going to throw this open just now. And if there are any questions you would like to ask, you have a choice. You can either unmute yourself and ask the question out loud, and you're very welcome to do so. Or you can fire a question in the chat. So, okay, is that someone who would like to give a shout out? Is that someone who's unmuting themselves? Is it not? Okay, right. Are there any questions at all that someone would like to ask? If there aren't, then I am gonna move on. I can't see anything coming through on chat. If you are chatting and for some reason I can't see it, then then give me a shout. Okay, gonna move on. And if there's anything that comes to mind later on, then just fire me a message, keith@salesmarble.co.uk, and I'd be more than happy. There we go, 20. Let's have a look. Right, okay, right. Keith and Sarah to everyone. Yep. Promotional, yeah. Mr. Tim, main channel director. Okay, director and partner. Okay, so Tim, you've got a new enterprise effectively in the UK. So I'm glad to see you're doing that. What hashtags my process? So this is it. So this is called incidental benefits. So Burger King unashamedly follow McDonald's in what they do. They let McDonald's spend all the big bucks. Jimmy, you probably know about this more than anyone else. McDonald's, you knock yourself out with your $2 billion a year advertising revenue. Burger King unashamedly will copy, emulate, whatever other words you want to put in that space, and they create all, if you like, it's a bit like being second in F1. You let someone else out in the front doing all the hard work. Sorry, Jimmy,
I don't think there's anything wrong with looking at your competitors and seeing what works and what doesn't work for them. They're doing the hard work for you, especially if you're new to the market as well, or new into the marketplace. You might not be new to the market, but new into the marketplace, it's definitely a good idea to look at your competitors, which is something that Sarah touched on earlier on in her presentation. It's a good way of learning, and it's a good way of speeding up your marketing itself as well. I think one of the things that Sarah touched on was about which digital spaces you need to use to communicate with your clients. I would say that not every channel works for everybody, but I will always advocate that you should own all of the channels across the board. So all of your digital commodities you should own, even if you're not going to use some of them. For instance, TikTok isn't going to be for everybody, but you should absolutely own the digital space name. It's like your domain name, really, at the end of the day. One day you might find a use for it, but it may not be today. So I would definitely at least take ownership of your domains on those social channels.
Sorry, just on that, Jimmy, do you mean that, I'm probably last in the queue when it comes to advertising or being on TikTok? Do you mean that I should go on and register my sort of hashtag or
your handle? Yeah, your handle
sorry,
is what it's called. Yeah. So I think one of the things that I've found has happened, not very often, but it has happened, and it happens a lot with domains, is you might have a great takeaway, for instance, right? And it specializes in a particular cuisine, and you are on Facebook and on Instagram, and those are your two channels. Suddenly, somebody's not purchased, but set up another channel with your name, and when you try and go and get your name now on that channel, it's just not going to be visible. So they are maybe advertising their services based on your name, and your customers may inadvertently be looking for you on another channel as well.
That's a great shout. Thank you for that, Jimmy. No, I'm going back in time now, but I remember when I really am going back in time, but when email addresses were a new thing, just after the steam engine was invented, Goldman Sachs actually took a guy to court because he'd registered gs.com. And they took him to court saying he had unreasonably bought that domain name with no good faith intention of using it. He bought it specifically to exploit Goldman Sachs. The irony of Goldman Sachs being exploited shouldn't be lost on anyone on this call that's been around the brilliant or government Sachs.
The same story with Apple as well. Is not until recent years that Apple actually took ownership of apple.co.uk, and for a long time, people used to say, "Oh, yeah, we're going to go to Apple," and they go to apple.co.uk and they go to this really crappy-looking website. And for years, the guy wouldn't give up the domain, and he had absolute right of ownership because he was using it way before Apple were using it as well. And so in the end, Apple had to buy his domain off him for quite a sizable sum, I can imagine. But yeah, it's exactly the same thing. So imagine all of the digital spaces out there, like email, like domains, like your social channels. You definitely should acquire and maintain them for future use, at least anyway.
That's a great shout. Thank you so much. Sarah, thank you also for making a really material contribution to this and bringing social media to life in a way that, frankly, I'll have sent you all to sleep. So anyway, I'm just going to wrap up now. I recognise it's 27 minutes past, and I wanted to respect. I said I'd finish off on a couple of things. I just want to tell you about InLeads. I know James is on the line, but I'm sorry, James, can't let you speak to absolutely everyone. But I've put in place a program called InLeads.co.uk. Anyone on this call and anyone in the business world can get a 2-week free trial. But in the spirit of affiliates kind of brands, there is a link which I'll publish afterwards. You can get your own 2-week free trial. But in addition to that, you'll get 25% off the published rate of a 3-month campaign. I can tell you, which I couldn't tell you last week, is that I've just got, I'm doing some work for a couple of clients. On the back of that campaign, we've got £250,000 worth of pipeline, what I call qualified pipeline in the pipeline. The first deal closed last night, a smaller deal, but it's more than paid for itself, and it's free. So why would you not do that? I encourage you, given that we've now got to jump in the deep end of digital, for some of you that weren't terribly comfortable with that, I encourage you to go to InLeads, register. You can use my affiliate link or not, doesn't matter, but just get involved. It's free. If you want some help messaging, because that's the other important thing, then I'm happy to give you free 15 minutes. I'll help you to that end. Other than that, it's £250 an hour, unless you book an hour with me, which I'll give you 50 off at. Well, I've already talked about that. 15 minutes, 50 off, 125 an hour. 1 or 2 of you are taking advantage of that. Thank you. Won't name you because that would be indiscreet. But also, I want to point you in the direction of Niraj Kapoor's new book, which is The Easy Guide to Sales. I did have a word with him about the title before he published, because if sales was that easy, wouldn't take you and I. But I get the spirit of the title. It is kind of deconstructing the process. I highly recommend it. I've read it myself. I contributed to it, I think, and I highly recommended it. You can get, there's a Kindle edition for free, or you can have a physical copy. I didn't quite get it to hand, but anyway, I've posted it here, and I would encourage you to take advantage of that. The next webinar will be back to 11 a.m. next Wednesday, the 6th. Generating the right kind of leads for your business. That's why I wanted Sarah. I'm so pleased that Sarah I had asked ever so nicely, Sarah, to come on the line today to get us in the right headspace to think about that, around implementing the right kind of campaign. Not going to put you on the spot, Sarah, but if you are around next week, you'd be more than welcome to come back on and do something else. But I get you're very busy, which is why I wanted you in the first place. Okay, so thank you very much. I'm 1 minute over. I do apologize. So connect with me on LinkedIn and YouTube as well. I'll put, for everyone that's registered, I'll send you a link to this recording so you can play it back to your heart. I'm not expecting to be #1 in the Vodafone charts, but set the expectation high. You can message me at Keith@SalesMarvel. So it just remains to say thank you very much. Stay home, protect the NHS, save lives. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much, Keith.
You're very, very welcome.
Thank you.
Take care, everyone.
Look forward to next week. Cheers.
Keith. Thank you, Sarah. Bye-bye.
The button to end the meeting, so give me a chance here. Thank you.
Thank you, Keith. Thank you.
So thank you, everyone. Thank you. Take care now. Oh, Mr. Dwyer, I missed you. Bye, everyone.
Bye.